so we're going to talk a little bit about Shofar. I'm sure you're not too surprised why that is our subject. So there's going to be like 3 parts of this year. The first part is pretty straightforward. The second part is a little bit more difficult. And the third part, you're going to need all your capabilities to really get what I'm trying to say here. But let's start with a famous tshuva of the Yeshivat Ohr. The question was like this. There was a town that had 13 balabatim. Small little town, 13 families. And every year, they brought a special Baal Tukeya into town to blow the shofar. And it says they used to pay him shisha rot, whatever that is, a certain amount of money. One year, it was a time of turmoil and there was wars. And basically, the Baal Tukeya, the professional shofar blower, said, I ain't coming in for less than 20 rot, right? 3 times the price. And he said, you better pay me up front, right? I don't know how he got there up front. I mean, I was in town at that time, and there was a whole brouhaha, a whole commotion. 7 of the members of this huge town, 7, said, no way, we are not paying this guy. We can't afford it, we're not doing it. And 6 said, no, we gotta pay him. What's Rosh Hashanah without a shofar? We must pay him. And that was a shiloh. Who's right? Can the 6 who wanted to pay for the shofar force the 7 to chip in? So he brings here that the 6 said, so 7 said, we're the rove, we're the majority, right? So the 6 said, yeah, but the pasuk says, Lo yisiya acher rabbim l'royis. That's the pasuk in the Chumash. You don't go after the rabbim when they are doing evil, when they are contemplating evil. So the 6 said, even though we are the minority, the 7 are evil, and we can force them to pay for the money. Lo and behold, in this little town, even though they didn't have a Baal Tukeya, but they did have a Rebbe. They had, not a Chassidish Rebbe, they had a Rebbe, a primary school Rebbe. And they went to the primary school Rebbe and said, what do you say? Right, so this is a guy teaching kindergarten or whatever, 2nd or 3rd grade. And he said, what? I know the answer. It's an open Mishnah. It's a Mishnah I just happened to learn today with the boys, with the kids. He said, yeah, it's an open Mishnah? Yeah, because the Mishnah says in Peah that we know, what's the law of Peah? The landowner leaves the corner free, and all the aniyim basically go ahead and take what they can from the corner. But how does it work? It's first come, first serve. So basically, the landowner says, okay, here's the corner, and everyone basically jumped for it. What happened was, the Mishnah says, let's say the aniyim got together. The aniyim got together and said, you know what, there are 100 aniyim. They went to the landowner. Every year, we play catch a salami. We go ahead and we run for it, and there's a little bit of jostling. We want this year, just give it out equally. Don't leave the payah for first come, first serve. You give it out equally. Now, and there were 100 aniyim. 99 said, we don't want to fight. We don't want to have to go ahead and a tussle for the payah. One guy said, no. I guess the one guy was like a Rambo, or like a real strong guy. He was the one, I guess, who won every year. He said, no. The Torah says the way it works is that the owner does not allot it. It's first come, first serve. So it's 99 against 1. 99 aniyim said, enough of this competition. And one said, no, let's do it the way the Torah says. What does the Mishnah say openly? You got to go like the Torah says. And the one beats out the 99. And the Baal Bayis is not allowed to take it and allot it out equally. So said the Malamed Tanaikis, said the Cheder Rabbi, oh, it's an open Mishnah. And that Mishnah 99 said 8. But one said you got to do like the Torah. And who do you see wins? The one. So here too, even though 6 say, 7 say, we're going to forego with the shofar, but since 6 say we should bring the shofar in, they win. That's the story. That's the story. The Yeshivat Ohr, a pretty early Akron, goes ballistic. And he first of all, he goes crazy against this Malamed Tinoikis. I'm not going to go through the whole tshuva, but he says, how dare you go ahead and give a psak din when all you know how to do is teach Mishnayos to 3-year-olds, to 3rd graders. You have no right to paskin based on a Mishnah. And then he goes ahead and shows how there's absolutely no connection to what that Mishnah says and what we're dealing with. Okay? So we go here, 5-6 pages in the tshuva. At the end of the day, the Yeshivat Ohr basically comes out, it all depends on finances. It all depends on finances. If the 7 who don't want to bring in the Baal Tekeya cannot afford it, they legitimately don't have the money, and it would cause an amazing strain on them, then the 7 are right. The 7 are right. The 7 are right. Because I can't go through the whole thing now. There's certain limitations how much money you got to spend for mitzvahs, and definitely if the 7 say they can't afford it, the 6 can't force them. No. Now, that's just an aside. What happened is basically, what happened was the 6 said, fine. You guys don't want to pay? You don't got to pay. We're paying. The 6 who also were not so rich said, you 7 don't want to pay? We are going to pay. We're going to pay to bring the Baal Tekeya in. We're going to take on all the expense. And that's what happened. Oh. But they said, when that Baal Tekeya comes to shul and blows the shofar, you 7, he can't be mine to you. He can't have you in mind. So the 7 said, but we're going to be here anyway. What's the difference? You're paying. Bottom line is, the Baal Tekeya is there. Bottom line is, he's blowing. We couldn't afford it. No. The 6 said, no matter what, you cannot, we're putting in the contract, Mr. Baal Tekeya, you do not have in mind the other 7. Do not have in mind the other 7. Reminds me of a joke. A guy was Yom Kippur, by the Reform shuls, they have a guard by the shul. Unless you pay an exuberant amount of money, you can't go in. You have to have a ticket. You have a ticket, the guard says, oh, yeah, you can go in. So there was once a Jew, not religious at all. He had absolutely no interest even to going to shul in Yom Kippur. But his best friend was praying in the Reform shul. And his best friend's wife called him up and said, you won't believe I'm giving birth. I went to labor. Get my husband out of the shul. We got to go to the hospital. So the best friend jogs over to the shul and wants to run in to bring out the expectant father. Oh, the guard stops him. What are you doing here? Where's your ticket? So the guy said, no, I don't want to pray. I don't want to pray. All I want to do is get my friend out of the shul because there's an emergency. So the guard was, no, you can't go in without a ticket. You can't go in. Finally, after deliberations and after begging, the guard said, okay, I let you go in. But if I catch you praying, so help me God. Right? So this is what's going on over here. The six said, we're going to bring in the Baal Tekeya. We're going to bring him in. No problem. We're going to bring him in. But the Baal Tekeya should not have you in mind. And they were in a contract like that. Oh. So the Yeshivat Ohr says, basically that's legitimate. That's their prerogative. He gets involved in it. Right to do, not right to do, but basically that's their prerogative. And he says like this. Let's say the Baal Tekeya comes in, he's in shul, he sees the 6 guys on one side and the 7 guys on the other side. And the 7 guys are like, on that side of shul says, you are not doing the mitzvah shofar. And the 6 guys said, you are doing the mitzvah shofar. But by the way, they're all in shul. And the Baal Tekeya, at the last minute, right before he blows, he says, no, I'm having everyone in mind. He doesn't listen. He basically breaches the contract. He sort of like makes a statement, or he tells his friends. And at the end of the day, he blows for everyone. That's what happened. Like a messed up town for only 13 people, right? That's what happened. Yeshivat Ohr says, pay attention. Since that's what happened, no one is Yoitza. Baal Tekeya messed up so badly that not the 7 are Yoitza, not the 6 are Yoitza. No one was Yoitza, and the Baal Tekeya doesn't get any of his money, and that's it. Why? Why is no one Yoitza? He says, listen, the 6 hired the Baal Tekeya. A very clear contract. They said, Baal Tekeya, you are our shliach. That's what we're paying you for, right? And we're making you our shliach under certain terms. Under certain terms. Did the Baal Tekeya keep the terms? No, he broke the terms. He had in mind everyone. So since he had in mind everyone, the Baal Tekeya is not called a shliach anymore. When you give someone agency, you send someone to be an agent, if he doesn't keep the terms of the conditions of the contract, so he's not your agent anymore. So the 6 who actually hired the Baal Tekeya, since the Baal Tekeya broke the contract, they're not Yoitza. The 7, they're also not Yoitza because they never actually appointed the Baal Tekeya. They were like, okay, we're here in shul, fine, we happen to be here, but we know that he's not working for us. And they never actually appointed him, so they didn't think that he was working for them either, right? So basically, the Yeshivat Ohr says this guy, who thought he was being righteous, actually made it that no one is Yoitza. This is what the Yeshivat Ohr says. Okay? Now, well, if he would have before, let's say a couple minutes before, get a meeting, get everyone together, he could have done that. But what he did was, right before he blew, he said, okay, honey, I'm going to buy. And the 6 goes, well, no, you can't do that. And he said, I'm doing it anyway. Something like that. Something like that situation. It was sort of like just done. Ad hoc. And the 7 were like, wait a minute, we didn't pay for you. Basically, there's so much confusion. So basically, you're not his shliach, you're not his shliach, you're no one's shliach. All 13 were not Yoitza. On this, the Shari Tshuva, it's in the Shulchan Aruch, says, he brings this down, and he says, Yeshivat Ohr, I think you're wrong. I think all 13 are Yoitza. And he says, what are you talking about? Shlichus, agency. You made them a shlichus. There's no shlichus. What shlichus? The guy's just blowing the shofar. And the people are listening. So who cares if the guy who blew the shofar didn't exactly keep the terms? It wasn't like some type of official appointment, right? When you have someone davening for you, you appointed him, it's official. So the Shari Shua said, yeah, the Baal Tekeya maybe did something inappropriate, but at the end of the day, everyone was in shul, everyone was listening, he had a mind. He might say everyone, it doesn't make a difference that it wasn't exactly the way they set it up. So now, what is the machlokes? The shir is going to be about trying to figure out the machlokes in the Yeshivat Ohr and the Shari Tshuva. Who's right? Who's right? Basically, the machlokes is, according to Shari, it seems like according to the Yeshivat Ohr, when you appoint someone to blow your shofar for you, it's like you made him a shliach. It's like you appointed him, you gave him agency, and since he doesn't do it exactly the way you want him to do it, no shlichus, everything falls apart. It seems from the Shari Tshuva, no, the guy who blows the shofar for you is not really a shliach. He's just doing you a favor for blowing it for you, and it doesn't make a difference if the terms are not exactly the way you wanted it. Oh, so in order to understand this is going to be the last part of the shir, to understand this is going to be very deep. But let's start off with 101. What is the mitzvah of shofar? What is the mitzvah of shofar? What is it? So we know the famous machlokes. What bracha do you make on shofar? Based on the bracha, you figure out what the mitzvah is. We got the Rabbeinu Tam and the Smag and the Shiltis. They say the bracha is litkoyas a shofar. You take right before you blow the shofar, the chazan gets up there, the baltkein, litkoyas a shofar. Right, makes sense? Right, the mitzvah is to blow the shofar. Right, makes sense. But then on the other side, we have Rashi and the Rambam and the Rav Yah and the Bahag, and what we paskin, what's the bracha? The Shmaya kol shofar, right? To hear the shofar. So, let's put it in perspective. of distinctions this year. You got to be perspective. According to the Rebbeinu Tam, it seems the mitzvah is to blow. For example, what is the mitzvah of Kiddush on Friday night? To hear the Kiddush or to say the Kiddush? I know you're going to say, well, we always hear the Kiddush, right? Dad makes the Kiddush. No, that's a mistake. The mitzvah of Kiddush is not to hear it. You do not have to hear it. You can be deaf and you make Kiddush. Kriyas Torah, what's the mitzvah of Kriyas Torah? Oh, you got to hear the Torah. No, the mitzvah is not to hear the Torah. The mitzvah is to read the Torah, right? What's the mitzvah of Shema? Shema. You say Shema once in a while? Sure, every day. Shema, what is the mitzvah? To hear the words or to say the words? Someone who's deaf has no mitzvah to say Shema? Of course he has a mitzvah to say Shema. Of course he has a mitzvah. Clearly, the mitzvah of Kriyas Torah, right? Kriyas Torah, Kiddush, Shema, Kriyas Megillah. I don't want to get it. Kriyas Megillah too. How much like about that? Is not to hear it. It's to say it. It's black and white, right? Say it. And if you say Shema in an undertone and you don't hear it, you're yaitze. If you think about it only, that's a different story, right? So if you say Shema and you're wearing earplugs, for sure you're yaitze. Kriyas Torah, if you read it and you're wearing earplugs, for sure you're yaitze. No question. Oh. The same thing. Now we'll get to at the end of this year. Wait a minute, but I didn't read the Kriyas Torah, and I didn't say Kiddush. Dad did. So how does that work? We'll get to that in the end of this year. The bottom line is, it's clear like day, black and white. You could ask anyone from any yeshiva. They'll tell you all these mitzvahs have to do with saying. It has nothing to do with hearing. If you don't hear it, you're going to. Now, fine. So same thing. What is the mitzvah to Kiddush Shofar? Blowing. You blow it. Makes sense. And let's say you're wearing earplugs. No problem. What's the difference? Obviously, blowing means you create a sound. You're not blowing your nose here. You're not blowing a wind. You got to blow, make a sound. But the point is not to hear the sound, like by Shema. The point is not to hear the Shema. You don't have to hear the Shema, right? When you say it. So that's the Rebbeinu Tam. So we got on the makes sense, right? So that's the Rebbeinu Tam, the Smag, and the Shiltis, and they say the bracha is Litkoya. Oh, on the other side of the wagon, no. It's Rashi, Rambam, and everyone, Rav Yo. No. The main mitzvah is to hear. Let me ask you. You have sukkah, right? Sukkah. You build a sukkah. When are you building the sukkah? You got to build it. When are we building the sukkah, Moshe? Moshe. When are you building the sukkah? Moshe builds my sukkah, and he does an excellent job. It takes me 3 days to do it. It took him exactly an hour to do it last year. So, anyone who needs the sukkah being done, please call the Moshe. But be it as it may. Wait, no, we're going to get straight kind of. You're way ahead of us. Wait. So, what is a sukkah? You're going to say, building a sukkah is the mitzvah or living in it? Living in it, right? What is the building? Hexa, you got to do it. You know, you got to prepare it, right? It's buying the little, making the tefillin. Is making the tefillin the mitzvah or wearing the tefillin? No. Oh. So, says the other Rishonim, the blowing of the shofar, that's tantamount to building a sukkah. Meaning the main mitzvah is to hear. That's the mitzvah, to hear. Oh, what's the blowing? Well, you can't hear something. If you don't make the sound, you can't hear it. If you don't build the sukkah, you can't live in it. Right? If you don't make the tefillin, you can't put them on. So, unbelievable machlokes about shofar. Isn't that amazing? We're doing this our whole life, and we don't even know what the heck we're doing. But according to one side of the street, the mitzvah is the blowing. And you don't have to hear it. You can wear earplugs. And therefore the nusach is litkoya. On the other side, Rashi, Rambam, Rav Yo, Bahag. No. On the contrary, the blowing is tangential. You don't really got to blow. It's just the way to get the sound. It's like building a sukkah. And therefore, what's the mitzvah? The Shema. Great. They say, oh, right, fine. That's a great cheer. Wow. Machlokes, we're shining. No, yeah, we haven't started yet. This is the problem. We haven't even begun. Because the problem is, if we look at the Gemaras, we see that seemingly everyone is right here. Why is that? Pay attention. There's one Gemara Rosh Hashanah. Says, if you blow a shofar in a vat or a bar, so you're blowing the shofar, you're in a vat, you're in a bar, you're not Yotzei. Why not? Because you hear an echo. If you know anything about sound waves, basically you don't hear the shofar. You hear an echo of the shofar. So stop. What does it say? What does it say in the Gemara? Black and white, green and yellow. Blowing is not enough. Because if the whole point is just to blow, you don't have to hear it. You can wear earplugs. So what's the difference? So from that Gemara we see black and white, green and yellow, that blowing is a must. That the hearing is a must. Hearing is a must. That sounds like Rashi. And the Rambam, hearing is the main thing. Right? It says, you blow in the bar, you don't hear it. Oh. But we have 4 Gemaras that sound like the Rabbeinu Tam. That the blowing is the main thing. One Gemara, it says, Mesasik, if you're Mesasik with a Shofar, you're not Yotzeh. Meaning, let's say you're playing around with a Shofar, and you're not even trying to really blow it, but you're trying to clean it, whatever, and all of a sudden a sound comes out. But you don't really have a mind to blow it. Or it says, you're playing with a shofar and you want to play in it Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. That's what you're playing. And all of a sudden a call of a shofar comes out. Right? It says, oh, you're not Yotzeh. Even though you heard. Why not Yotzeh? You heard. What's the problem? You heard. You heard a beautiful call shofar.
Not correct.
It worked out that it came out exactly the way it's supposed to. You were Mesasik, you were just playing around with the shofar, and it just worked out, and it came out a perfect kol. Says the Gemara, you're not Yotzeh. Wait a minute, why not? You heard it. What's the problem? If the main thing is hearing it, let's say a sukkah. You wake up one day, I'm like, oh, who's going to build my sukkah? All of a sudden, it just comes down from heaven, like the third base of Middish. The sukkah just comes down. Oh, great, I got a sukkah. It'll make no difference. Same thing here. Who cares if the main thing is the blowing, if the main thing is the hearing, who cares? But to make it further, if you don't believe me, the Gemara says openly, the Mishnah. If a cher is shayt to the cotton blow, you got a cher is shayt to the cotton. Most musical cotton in the world. A virtuoso. Unbelievable. And the cotton blows, you're not Yotzeh. Why not? I heard a beautiful if a cotton blows a sukkah, is there a problem? I can't sleep in that sukkah afterwards? No problem. So it says black and white that if a cotton blows, you're not Yotzeh. Why not? I heard it. What's the problem? Right? And on top of all that, the Gemara says black and white, that when the guy blows, the chazan blows, he has to have a mind to be mighty you. The Baal Tekei, when he blows, Rabbi Zeir says, he has to have in mind to be mighty you. And you have to have a mind to be Yotzeh. Wait 1 minute. If the whole thing's to me here, why does he have to have a mind that he's being mighty to me? Right? The halacha is by sukkah, something called a sukkah nagbach, which means if a guy builds a sukkah, a woman is building a sukkah, sukkah doesn't make a difference who, what, where, when. You have to have in mind anything. So let's set this up. On one hand, we know that hearing is crucial. Because the Gemara says, if you blow it in a bar, you're not Yotzeh, because you don't hear it. On the other hand, we have other Gemaras that say, clearly, Tekiah is crucial too. Because it says, if a cotton blows for you, you're not Yotzeh. It says, the guy who blows for you has to have a mind to be mighty to you. Right? It says, if you just happen to be playing around with the shofar and a sound comes out, you're not Yotzeh. What if you do all these things? That the Tekiah is crucial. That's why a cotton can't be mighty to you. If the only thing is to hear, it's irrelevant where the kol emanates from, how it emanated, as long as it's coming from a shofar. So what do we do over here? Who's right? Oh, so says the Shagasaya and the Minchas Chinuch. That's the Zayde, that's on the yard side. And the Yom Trua. They all say it must be. They're both part of the mitzvahs. The shofar has 2 aspects. For example, like by a korban, you got to do zrika, you got to do shchita. You see sometimes you have a mitzvah that has parts of it that each part is a mitzvah, like a korban. Let's say by tevel. What do you do with by tevel, right? You got the untied, what do you do with untied stuff? You first mafresh, you first ties it, you first take off, and then you give it to kohen. That's two separate parts. That's exactly by shofar. Shofar is a bipartite, a 2-pronged mitzvah, and both are crucial. Hearing and blowing. You need both. Great. Wonderful. Why not? And what's the machlokes then? Then we could have said very simple. All the Rishonim agree with each other. Everyone agrees with each other. They're just having like a machlokes. Okay, when you have one mitzvah that has 2 parts, What should you do the bracha on? The first part of the mitzvah or the second part of the mitzvah? You know, I don't know why we couldn't make a bracha. Let's call you Shmaya. I don't know why we couldn't make that bracha. But they're having like a very local machlokes. When you have one mitzvah that has two separate parts, and both parts are crucial, should you make the bracha on the initial part or on the latter part? Okay? Everything is good. Shalom Yisrael. This is not too difficult. Oh. And therefore, that's right, you have to blow the shofar and not wear earplugs. No earplugs. And you better make sure that the guy who's blowing it can be mighty you. And when you blow it, you can't be like just by accidentally a kol comes out, because you need both parts, the tekiah and the shmiyah. Right? Oh. The problem is, if you open up a Rambam, the Rambam is pretty emphatic not that way. You know, we want to say make shalom. Everyone's right. Tekiah, shmiyah. But the Rambam, in two places, says quite emphatically, very clearly, the mitzvah of shofar is only shmiyah. Only. One place he asked the famous question, it's Gemara. Tell me, we once gave a shir about mitzvah babaver, right? We know if you steal a lulav and you shake that lulav, are you yaitzeh? No, why? Mitzvah babaver. The way you created this, the mitzvah suan avera, right? Mitzvah babaver. The Rabbi says, what about if you steal a shofar? What about if you steal a shofar and you blow it? Chayrit shouldn't be yaitzeh too. Mitzvah babaver. Says the Rabbi, no, you are yaitzeh. Why? He says, because the mitzvah of shofar is to hear. And yes, you could steal the shofar, but you can't steal the sound waves. You don't steal sound waves. And hence, since the mitzvah is only to hear, the part of the mitzvah that is the mitzvah, you didn't steal. You didn't steal the sound waves, and you didn't steal the hearing. You stole the shofar. Oh, that's only a hechsher mitzvah. That's a preliminary. The Rabbi says black and white. There is no mitzvah baver by shofar, because the mitzvah is to hear, and the hearing part, which is the sound waves, you can't steal that. Right? Shofar goes to talk about yotza she'ena mitzvah ela b'shmiyas hakol. After shloi naga by v'leik biyoi. You don't got to touch the shofar. You don't even got to look at the shofar. You just got to hear. The aim b'kol din gezel. You can't steal a voice. You can't steal sound waves. Wow. So wait 1 minute. This is not good. We wanted to make shalom. We want to say tekiah is the essential part of the blowing is the essential part of the mitzvah, and hearing is the essential part of the mitzvah. But if that's so, the Rambam makes no sense, because the Rambam says there is no mitzvah babaver. If tekiah was a major part, like we said that both parts are major, well then you have a problem. Bottom line is the blowing is with the vessel, and you stole the vessel, just like you shook a lulav that's stolen. So the Rambam seems to say quite clearly, only shmiyah. Oh. More so, the Rambam had a tshuva sefer. And in this tshuva sefer, he was asked, tell me, what bracha do you make, shmiyah or tekiah? What do you think the Rambam said? What? Shmiyah. Oh, good. You got the. Oh, you guys are not sleeping yet. Right. Shmiyah. And he says, listen to these words, very important words. He says, the main mitzvah is shmiyah. And he said, I'll prove it to you. He said, it must be that way. When you go to a shul, does everyone blow? One person blows. How in the world if one person blows if the main mitzvah is to blow? The main mitzvah is to blow. Or at least 50% of the mitzvah is to blow. So how in the world is one guy blowing for you? A lulav, you go to shul, does one guy shake the lulav? Or everyone shakes the lulav? Everyone shakes the lulav. Because a guy can't do it for you, right? Right? When you put on tefillin, you walk into shul, you put on tefillin for me, do me a favor. I'm putting on for myself, put on two. Put one for me, one for you. No such thing. But says the Rambam, how in the world is it possible that tekiah, the blowing, is a mitzvah. How is it possible? No one does that. Only one guy does it. It must be, says the Rambam, the mitzvah shmiya. So there we go. The Rambam pulled the mat under us, the wind out of our sail, and said only shmiya. Oh, wait, what? Oh, the problem is I'm not going to repeat the rayas, but we brought many rayas that the tekiah is part of the mitzvah. We said if a cherish shaituk adam blows, you're not yotzeh. Why are you not yotzeh? You heard, according to Rambam, you heard. Who cares who you hear it from? Right? And by the way, the Rambam himself he says, blowing of the shofar is tantamount to making a sukkah. He says it black and white. He says the mitzvah is shmir leit kia, k'moy shah sukkah, ha-mitzvah hu yeshiva v'lo yasiyah. Uba lulav ha-netila v'lo ba'ogdan. By lulav, what's the mitzvah? To make the lulav before, or to shake it? So you're like, you're astounded. Rambam, we have open Gemaras. And the Rambam brings down all these Gemaras. It's not like Rambam didn't see the Gemara. The Rambam brings down all these Gemaras. Oh. So we are a real quagmire over here, right? Oh. So comes in who? Rabbi Chaim Brisk. Right? Now it starts to get a little difficult. If you say Rabbi Chaim Brisk, you know you're in trouble. And by the way, this is a question, through the centuries, everyone's been dealing with these issues. This is famous Yeshivat Torah. I'm not going to go with it. Everyone said something different. But until recently, the earlier Achronim said, 2 mitzvahs, no problem. But then we sort of had this revelation of this Rambam. It seems Shmiya. So says Zvi Reb Chaim. He says, and he teaches us an important yesod about mitzvahs. He says that obviously the Rambam must agree that tekiah does have a role in the mitzvah. He can't go against all the Gemaras. What does Reb Chaim say? Famously, he brings down, when you come to a mitzvah, there are always 2 aspects of a mitzvah. The Maisa mitzvah and the Kiyum mitzvah. Right? I'm sure you've all heard this. Maisa mitzvah means what you do, the action, and the Kiyum is what is the result that God wants. Right? Now, let's show some examples. Tell me, the mitzvah bris milah. What's the mitzvah? Clearly to do surgery. But what does God want? That you should be circumcised the rest of your life. The mice of the mitzvah is to do the surgery. But that's not what God wants, per se. That's not the goal. The goal is that you should be circumcised. Clearly, right? So the Maisa mitzvah is the cutting, but the Kiyum, another example. Let's say, B'dikas Chametz. What's the Maisa mitzvah? Checking. And why does God want you to check? Because He wants the house to be Chametz free. The checking is just a way to get to a result. He wants it not to be Chametz when? All 7 days. There, or Micah, you put a gate up on the roof. What's the Maisa mitzvah? You're putting up the gate. That's what God wants? No, He wants that the gate should stay there, and it should be there always, and that people shouldn't fall. Right? Oh, let's go to the other side. By Lulav. What's the Maisa mitzvah? Shaking. What's the Kiyum mitzvah? Shaking. There is no, by Lulav, there is no Maisa and Kiyum. It's all one and the same. Why are you shaking the lulav? I don't know why. God told me to shake the lulav. There is no clear goal. The goal is to shake. Meaning by lulav, the maisa and the kiyum are one of the tefillin. Are you going to say, what's the maisa and what's the kiyum? The maisa is to put it on. And what's the kiyum? That should be on. It's all one and the same. But there are some mitzvahs, basically, that the point of the mitzvah is to bring a certain result. An empirical result. You do the milah because you want the guy to be circumcised the rest of his life. You do the b'dikas chametz because you want the house to be clean. So that's called a maisa and a kiyum. And some mitzvahs, the maisa, or let's say writing a sefer Torah. What's the mitzvah? Write a sefer Torah. But you have to retain ownership. So what's the mitzvah? To write the sefer Torah, or to have a sefer Torah? No, the mitzvah is to have the kiyum. The goal is to have. But the way you have it is by writing it. So there's also mice, right? I can give hundreds of examples. But basically, in a nutshell, there are certain mitzvahs that there's a clear reason why God wants it to happen. A certain type of empirical, a very practical reason for it. Then the kiyum is that. Now, what? Oh, you're a genius, Yonason. We're going to ask Jonason's question in a minute. So basically, says Reb Chaim, Shofar is exactly that. It's divided up into two parts, a Maisa mitzvah and a Kiyum mitzvah. Both parts are important, but Maisa mitzvah is considered a little bit lower than the Kiyum mitzvah. Because since the Maisa mitzvah, it's integral, you must do it, you have to do it. But since the point of the result is to bring to a result, so a Maisa mitzvah is considered a bit of a lower level than the Kiyum mitzvah. Right? And we'll see soon where this comes out. So says Reb Chaim. That's exactly what Shofar is. Shofar has a Maisa mitzvah and a Kiyum mitzvah. The Maisa mitzvah is to blow it. And there's no question you have to blow it. And it's incumbent upon you to blow it. But the purpose of the blowing is that it should be heard. The purpose of the blowing is that there should be a Kiyum mitzvah. So basically what Chaim is doing is saying, so are two parts of the mitzvah. There are definitely two parts of the mitzvah. But the part of blowing is relegated a little bit lower level because it is called a Maisa mitzvah. Now we have Jonason's question. Wait a minute, Rabbi, fine. So what is the difference between Hechsher mitzvah, Maisa mitzvah, and Kiyum mitzvah? So we're saying like this. There is a hierarchy. Hechsher mitzvah is going to be something that is not in propinquity, is not immediate with the Kiyum mitzvah. I.e., a sukkah. You build a sukkah when? Today. When do you sit in it? 2 weeks from now. When the Hechsher mitzvah can be divorced, separated from the Kiyum mitzvah, meaning they aren't done at the same time, we give it the appellation Hechsher mitzvah. It's tefillin. I make the tefillin, and 2 weeks later I put it on. That gets the appellation Hechsher mitzvah. It's also something important, but it's low on the hierarchy. When you have a Hechsher mitzvah that happens exactly at the same time as a Kiyum mitzvah, that we call a Maisa mitzvah. So when you blow the shofar, yes, the main thing is to hear it. But how do you hear it? You blow it. After you blow it, it's like 10 years later you hear it? No, you hear it right away. So that gives it, that's why we see it. It's an outlook. It's the way we have a Besorah, that's the way we look at it. That, like, for example, you do the bris milah. The second after you do the bris milah, he's circumcised. The main mitzvah is not, the cutting is not what we really care about. We really care about that he's circumcised. But clearly, we're going to call the bris milah a Maisa. We're not going to say a Hechsher mitzvah. We call it a Maisa mitzvah, right? You do b'dikas chametz. Clearly, what we want is that there's no chametz in the house. But the second after you do the b'dika, there's no chametz in the house. Basically, like this. 3 levels. Hechsher mitzvah is not really called a mitzvah at all. Maisa mitzvah is when you do an action that right away brings about a result that God wants. Okay? But Maisa mitzvah, even though it's secondary, but it is a crucial part, and you have to do it. We got this? Famous. They use Torah all over the place. Okay? Hechsher, Maisa, Kiyum. So now everything is answered. Everything is answered. Why is everything answered? The Rambam, when he was saying that the mitzvah shmiya, all he wanted to say was that Maisa, the blowing, is downgraded. He wasn't saying that there's no mitzvah in the blowing. No, you have to blow it, and you gotta get a gadol to blow it for you, and it can't be a chev shek to a cotton. No, there's definitely a Maisa mitzvah. But when it comes to mitzvah b'avera, which is a very delicate thing, you use an Aveira to serve God. There the Rambam says, since the main point of the Shofar is the hearing, that's the Kiyum, we don't care if the Maisa part has a mitzvah Aveira aspect to it. But let's go by Lulav. Lulav, what's the Maisa and the Kiyum? It's one of the same. By Lulav, someone say, what's the Maisa of Lulav? Shaking. What's the Kiyum? I don't know, God wants it to be shaked. I mean, right? There's no two separate things. It's all one and the same. Why does God want you to shake it? I have no idea. You know, you go to a philosophy share. What does God want? Why does God want us to wear tefillin? You know, basically things that are more, that we don't know the reason for, usually the mice and the kiyum happen one and the same. Usually that's what happens. So, by lulav, if it's stolen, mitzvah b'meir. Right? Because the mice and the kiyum were happening with a stolen good. But the Rambam is saying, yes, shofar, there is a mice mitzvah blowing. The bottom line is, the main thing is the kiyum is to hear. And there was no problem, it's a b'ver. Okay. So basically what we did was, we sort of said like the Achronim said that there are two parts of the mitzvah, it's a bipartite mitzvah, but we sort of lessened a little bit the blowing part. A little bit, we made it a little bit lower by calling it a mice mitzvah. And that could be the machlok, it could be now, according to this, everyone agrees with each other. Everyone agrees to this big shtickle Torah, Reb Chaim. And they're still arguing what bracha should you make. Maybe the Rebbeinu Tam says, I agree with everything we said, but maybe you should blow into action. He holds you should blow into action. And the Rambam holds, no. You should blow in the end goal. What's the end goal? What's the kiyum? What does God want? He wants us to hear. That's the main thing. So now, everybody said this was the second part, which is relatively understandable. Now we get to the hard part. Okay, at the end of the day, everyone agrees, and this is what you were asking, this is what Moshe just asked me. At the end of the day, everyone here has to blow the shofar, the blowing part. You want to call it a little lower level, Maisa mitzvah. The other Achronim say, no, it's an integral part of the mitzvah. So at the end of the day, how in the world does only one guy blow it for you? At the end of the day, how is it that only one person blows and everyone is Yotze? We're saying now, even according to Rambam, the blowing is at least a Maisa mitzvah, is at least something that you have to do. So what's the answer to that question? So there are two possible answers to this question. And we're going to see that these two possible answers is the machlokes between the Chavos Yair and the Shari Tshuva. One answer. We all know, pay attention, we all know there's something called Shemei Kohanim. Everyone knows Shemei Kohanim, but do we know what that means exactly? Meaning, what I want to do here is make a distinction between Shlichus and Shemei Kohanim. How does Shemei Kohanim work? That is doing Kiddush. And we said Kiddush, the mitzvah is not to hear. You can be deaf and make Kiddush. No question about that. Kriyas Torah, the mitzvah is not to hear. So, what's the mitzvah to read? Okay, so what's going on? You're not reading it. Oh, so we have a Gemara in Sukkah. The Gemara in Sukkah asks this question, and the Gemara in Sukkah brings a pasuk to teach you a chiddush. What's the chiddush? Shemei Kohanim. What does this magical thing mean? And where do you learn that? We learned it out from a pasuk we learned it from a pasuk in Navi. That it says there openly someone heard something and God refers to it as if he spoke it. Shemei Kohanim is some type of numinous magic. When the Baal Koireh reads the Sefer Torah and I hear it, we somehow or other be joined together. We mind melt. With some type of synergy. Some type of, because I am listening to him, it is as if I am reading the Sefer Torah. Shomeya ke'ona. What are the words? Shomeya is like he said it. But this is something, meaning, this is very important. He's not my shliach. For example, if I want to submit to marry a woman, right? So we learn Kedushin. You can send someone to marry a woman off for you, right? Is there Shemei Kohanim over there? No, you're sitting at home. You're not doing nothing, right? It has nothing to do with you. You gave him a shlichus. You gave him the power of agency, and he's doing. Is that what's happening here by the Kriyas Torah? No, you're not sitting at home. You are an active partner with him. The chiddush is when you hear him, somehow or other, you sort of become, you sort of join him, and somehow or other, what he says is like you said. So when Dad is doing kiddush, when you're hearing it, you're not being yoitza by hearing. It's not because you heard it, yoitza. Because you heard it, it's like you said it. When you hear Kriyas Torah, it's because you heard it, it's like you said it. Right? Any bracha that someone makes for you, he's not your shliach. It's by you hearing it, you merge with him. And it's like you said it. That's Shemei Kohen. Okay? So now, here's the question. By Shofar, how are you being yoitze the mitzvah, the tekiah part? We said the blowing is an important part. It's a part. So how yoitze? So you say, oh, Rabbi, fine, Shemei Kohen. We know the concept like that, Shemei Kohen. It's big chiddush. Oh. But many Achronim say, no. We only say Shemei Kohen by speaking. We don't have a source we can say Shemei Kohen by a different act. When your father says Kiddush, it's a custom. When you hear it, it's like you said it. But there's no pasuk that when someone is blowing a shofar, we can make believe it's like you're blowing it because you hear the sound. Blowing is a whole different ball game. First of all, blowing has an object. But when you do Kriyas Torah or any other bracha, there is no object. So maybe when there's no object involved, we can say, my hearing is like I spoken. But I can say my hearing is like I picked up an object and we're blowing it? That's a big chiddush. So Shemei Kohen is not such a great option. Okay. All right? Oh, so you say, okay, so what are you going to do? Option 2, shlichus. You know what? The chazan, no Shemei Kohen. He's my shliach. He's my shliach. That's how he's being yoitze. Like I can send a shliach to sell something for me, and to marry off a woman for me, to divorce a wife for me, whatever it may be. He's my shliach. You're like, oh no, Rabbi, fine. That can't be right. If so, Judaism will be really good. I'll pay everyone. You put tefillin on for me. You do the lulav for me. You go to first seder for me. You know, if we're not great, the little bit we know, we cannot do a shliach for mitzvahs. We cannot do a shliach for mitzvahs. If not, life would be a lot easier, right? Right? You know, you're at a bris milah. So the little kid is a little precocious, a little smart kid. He said, Dad, how come you're not doing the bris milah? No, he's doing it. Oh, okay. So the kid says, you know what? Get another kid to do the bris milah on also. You know, a shliach. It doesn't happen, right? Oh, wait a minute. So we're in trouble. We are in major league trouble here. The guy is Rosh Hashanah. When's Rosh Hashanah? Sunday night or Monday night? Sunday night. So the guy's getting up there, blowing that shofar, and we don't know what's going on. Again, we said if Shmiya was the only thing, no problem. If only Shmiya, I couldn't care who blows the shofar. It could be a chimpanzee. It doesn't make a difference who blows the shofar. He doesn't gonna do nothing for me. But now that we're saying that Kia is such an integral part, a secondary level, whatever, what's going on? Shemei Kohen don't work, seemingly, and Shlichus don't work. So Rabbi Isai, I know we should end, but we can't. So Rabbi Isai, here is the distinction. Pay attention. It is not 1,000% true what I said. You cannot do a shliach to do a mitzvah. I'm like, you cannot do a shliach to do a mitzvah. That is not 100% true. Who has the mitzvah to do the bris milah on the son? And who does it? A mile. You can do it. You see, you can do a shliach. Tell me, b'dikas chametz. Who has to do the b'dikas chametz? The owner of the house. Could he send the shliach to do the b'dikas chametz? Of course he could. All the rich people, they send other people to do it for them. Of course he could, right? Chanukah light. You have to light it. You can tell your wife to do it for you. Of course you can tell your wife to do it for you. There are many mitzvahs. Micah, putting up the gate. You got to do it. You can send the shliach. Of course you can send the shliach. So, what's the distinction? Which mitzvahs do we say you could send a shliach, and which mitzvahs do you say you can't send a shliach? So you're holding on? The answer is exactly what we said before. The mitzvahs that are two-parted, there's a ma'isa and a kiyum, and the main thing is the kiyum, and the kiyum happens subsequently, then you can send a shliach. A mitzvah that the ma'isa and kiyum are one and the same, you cannot send a shliach. Let's talk it out. Bris Milah, what do we say the main thing is? The cutting, or that the kid should be circumcised? The main thing is that the kid should be circumcised. So there we don't care if you do it or send a shliach. Because even though you have to cut, but it's a ma'isa mitzvah, it's just to get to a result. There you can send some Hanukkah light. Is the main thing to light it, or that there should be for half an hour pursuing Nisa? What's the main thing Hanukkah light? That it should be lit, that the second you light it? No. That it should be there for a half an hour. There you can send someone else. Right? Micah, what's the main thing? That you put at the gate, or that it's gated? There you can send the shliach. But below love, what's the main thing? To shake it. To shake it. So, if he shakes it, you didn't shake it, you did nothing. You did absolutely nothing. The point of the mitzvah is that it should be shook. But why should it be shook? I don't know why. God wants to be shook. By who? By you. Clearly, over there, the issue is, since there is no clear kiyum, the point is that you should do it. Mila. Okay? God didn't do bris Mila. You do it for me. I'll pay you a lot of money. Don't work. Why not? Because the Mila itself, the mitzvah of to cut is on the father, but to be cut is on you. To be molded, to be circumcised, right? You can't tell someone else. It's a big kitzer. Pay attention, Rabbi said. We're at the end over here. No, we're not. We're close to the end. It comes out like this. The rule. When do we say, it's very deep, when do we say you can do a shliach for mitzvahs, and when do we say you can't do a shliach for mitzvahs? Tefillin, you cannot do a shliach. I can't say, you put on tefillin for me. Because what's the point of what's the kiyum of the mitzvah? That the tefillin should be on you. Not to be on him. When do we say shlichas for mitzvahs? When there's a distinct kiyum that has not connected to your body. When there's the God wants a result, that clearly the ma'isa is just to bring a result, an outside result. Then you can send the shliach. Do b'dikas chametz for me. Light the menorah for me. Be the moil for me. Put up a mezuzah for me. Also, the thing is that it should be on afterwards. Okay? But tefillin and lulav, we say there is no shlichus for mitzvahs. So now we have a beautiful answer. Pay attention. By shofar. Almost finished. By shofar. We asked the question, how in the world is someone blowing the shofar? For me. I have to shake the lulav. I got to put on the tefillin. How could someone blow the shofar for me? How is that possible? So, based on this Reb Chaim, it's all understood. The blowing of the shofar, I make him a shliach. Wait a minute. We said you can't make a shliach for a mitzvah. No, for the shofar I could make a shliach. Because the blowing part is the ma'isa mitzvah. The blowing part is an important part, but it's only to lead to result. So yes, I have to blow, but for that I could make a shliach. What about the hearing? No, the hearing I have to hear. The kiyum I have to do. So what's happening when the chazin's up there? He's being your shliach to blow, just like you can send the shliach to light Hanukkah menorah for you and to do b'dikas chametz, and then you hear. So you're doing your part of the mitzvah, the kiyum, and he's doing the ma'isa mitzvah for you. So based on the Reb Chaim, we could say that yes, he is a shliach. So now we have an understanding of two schools of thoughts. How is it that the chazan blows the shofar and it's you? One school of thought is going to be Shemei Koina. There is a school of thought that Shemei Koina applies by shofar too. Even though we said it's not exactly like Shemei Koina is by speaking. Shemei Koina usually doesn't have an object, but there is a school of thought. But no, same thing. How are you blowing? You are blowing. I'm blowing. How am I blowing? Because by you hearing him, it's somehow you attach yourself to him, and it's like you're blowing, right? Amazing. You're listening to the shofar and you run out of breath. You know why? Because Shemaya Kona. It's like you're blowing. That's one school of thought. One school of thought. But like I said, it's not so clear that we say Shemaya Kona. Another school of thought would be, no, you're not blowing. What do you mean I'm not blowing? But I have to blow. Yeah, no. You could make a shliach. You could appoint a shliach to blow for you. Okay? You got this? It's a little bit deep. Oh, now we're going to say this is the machlokes between the Yeshivat Ohr and the Sharei Tshuva. The Yeshivat Ohr understood that the 6 guys, when they appointed the Baal Tekeah, it's a din of a shlichus. Shlichus is a contractual type of deal. They're learning that, and that's the way the Rambam learns. Clearly, that's the way the Rambam learns. The Rambam learns that work is a shlichus. So they're learning that what? They're learning that if the Baal Tekeah is my shliach, if he messes up in any which way, he's not my shliach anymore. Because if you learn shlichus, it's a business deal, and if you breach any of the business deal, the shlichus becomes absolved. So the 6 guys hired the Baal Tekeah. They gave him very strict conditions. He broke the conditions. You're not my shliach. If I send you to marry off a girl, and you married the wrong girl, or you give her the wrong ring, that's it. No shlichus. Don't work. That's what the Yeshivat Ohr says. You hired the 6 guys. The 6 guys hired. They broke contract. The Sharei Tshuva, right? Sharei Tshuva learns the other way. There's no din shlichus here. When the Chazan blows the shofar, he's not your shliach. It's not working that way. So what is it? It's Shemaya Kona. There's some type of magic that when you hear him, and he wants to be more to you, and you want to connect to him, there's a Shemaya Kona works as magic din halacha. There's because it's like you blew it. If it's Shemaya Kona, it doesn't make a difference if the guy doesn't do exactly what you want. It doesn't make a difference if he breaks contract. Yeah, they paying him, and they told him, don't have them in mind. Don't have them in mind. But he did have them in mind. So he did have them in mind. So what? You heard, they heard. You want to be yaitzel. The 6 obviously do want to be yaitzel at the end of the day. So he heard, you connected with him. He broke contract. So he broke contract. There was no contract. There's no shlichus. It wasn't like some type of financial choshen mishpat type of contract. But that's the machlokes, Rabbi, between the Yeshivat Ohr and the Sharei Tshuva. The Sharei Tshuva says when a chazan is blowing the shofar, the mechanism is Shemaya Keh. Oh, beautiful. Shemaya Kona. And the Yeshivat Ohr, and basically the Rambam says the same thing. It's almost black and white in the Rambam, because that's what the Rambam says. The Rambam says, how are you yoitzer when someone else blows for you? And he knows Shemaya Kona. He didn't. Obviously, the Rambam held to what Shemaya Kona didn't exist. So what is the Rambam saying? Oh, it must be that the key is a lower level, a Maisa mitzvah, and that you could have a shlichus. So the Yeshivat Ohr is learning it's a din of a shliach. And he's basically going to Yeshivat Ohr. He's blowing for you. You are not blowing. You are not blowing. But you gave him agency. He's doing it for you. And according to the Sharei Tshuva, you are blowing. Because by hearing him, you are blowing. Oh, everybody's sight. So I hope you got some of this. I just want to end off. So he's talking about shofar, and if you're not totally confused by now, you're like, wow, this shofar thing, I thought it was so simple. Actually, shofar is probably the most complicated mitzvah. Out of the mitzvahs that we do all the time, it's probably the most complicated thing. Like, is the mitzvah shmiyah? Is it tkiyah? It's very complicated. I just gave you a teeny taste. I know you don't believe it. It's just a teeny bit of what's going on. There's a lot more to Chazanish. A lot more is going on over here. And by the way, shofar itself doesn't say shofar in the Torah at all. We don't even know shofar. It says a zichron and trua. We don't even know shofar, except we know from the Gzeres HaKosiv. The Karaites actually don't blow shofar. They don't blow shofar because they don't say shofar. So, I just want to give an interpretation of pasuk that we're going to say a lot on Rosh Hashanah. And this is a word you can say over at the table. So we say Tiku b'chodesh Shofar b'kesel yom chagenu, right? We happen to say it every Wednesday, as I recall, or every Thursday. When do we say it? Every Thursday, right? The pasuk itself is like a mystical type pasuk, but that's what we say when we do Kiddush on Rosh Hashanah. Tiku b'chodesh Shofar b'kesel yom chagenu. Ki chayk liyisrael the mishpat l'kei Yaakov. Blow the shofar and the new moon. It's a concealed chag. It's b'kesel yom chagenu. It's concealed. Chok liyisrael. It's an ordinance to Yisrael. Mishpat l'kei Yaakov. A judge. What is this pasuk talking about? Oh. So let me explain to you. The last part of the pasuk, I'm going to explain the last part and then explain the first part. The last part of the pasuk says, Chok liyisrael mishpat l'kei Yaakov. What happens in Rosh Hashanah? It's Yom Adin, right? Yom Adin. Now, we're all here. We all have here lots of questions on God. And as you get older, you have a lot more questions, right? Why are the famous theodicy, a lot of things don't go the way we want it to. And more than that, we see a lot of tzaddikim that are suffering terribly. A lot of tragedies just recently, it's endless. Tragedies abound. It's a friend of mine lost a wife in a freak bus accident not so long. You can't even understand what's going on over here. But on the other hand, we believe that there is justice, that God is running the world, and there is rhyme and reason to what's going on, right? That's the last. This pasuk is talking about Rosh Hashanah, right? We say it in Rosh Hashanah. Tikka b'chodesh Shofar, talking about Rosh Hashanah. So what's the last part of the pasuk? Ki chayk liyisrael. What does chayk mean? Something we don't understand. The judgment of Rosh Hashanah, we know it's happening, but we never understand it. So for us, it's a chok. What does chok always imply? Something that we don't understand. Mishpat l'kei Yaakov. God knows what does Mishpat mean? Judgment, clear judgment, meaning justice, things that you can understand. Mishpat is always something you can understand. So for Yisrael, meaning us, it's a chok. We don't really understand God's mysterious ways. Why good and bad is happening. Why the Russians has $1 zillion and the Koil guy is like, whatever, has no money. Oh, and that's why in one aspect, you can't say this, but in one aspect, in this area, we can almost say the Jews are on a higher level than God. Obviously, you can't say that. But in some aspect, we know that the name Yisrael is always a higher level than Yaakov. Right? Yaakov is a lower level name. And so, Chayk Yisrael. Yisrael, that's us. We're on such a high level. We accept that there is a just judge and that everything actually does tally up, even though we don't understand it. That's why it's called Chayk Yisrael. We're Yisrael, and even if it's a chok, we accept it. Mishpat l'kei Yaakov. God, he understands what's going on. He knows everything. He knows that maybe you're an incarnation of some guy who 2,000 years ago did something wrong, and that's why you have to suffer. Who knows what's going on? Who knows? But the Rabbi does know. So that says, Chayk Yisrael Mishpat, for the Rabbi Shalom, it's Mishpat, l'kei Yaakov. How does it attach to the first part of the pasuk? Rosh Hashanah is one of the most strange phenomena. It's a yontif that no one knows when the yontif is, like we spoke about a couple weeks ago. No one knew when Rosh Hashanah was, basically. Because when's Rosh Hashanah? Rosh Chodesh. When's Rosh Chodesh? You don't know until sometime later on in the day. Basically, 99% of the Klal Yisrael did not know when Rosh Hashanah was. Is there anything so strange than that? And nowadays we know we have a set calendar, but in principle, the way it's supposed to be, come on, no one knew, except people in Yerushalayim. Well, isn't that strange? That's strange, right? That's why it's called Bakesed. Rosh Hashanah is called Bakesed, because the yontif itself is so mysterious. And I want to add on, Tikka Shofar. The Shofar is mysterious. Based on the shir, we don't know what Shofar is either. But why is it so? Oh, the answer is, that's the end of the pasuk tallies up with the first part of the pasuk. The end of the pasuk is saying the whole Rosh Hashanah is the day of judgment, and we have no idea what's going on. And that's why the Yontif itself is so mysterious. That's why the Yontif itself we don't even know when the Yontif is. So that's the connection between Tikka B'Chodesh, the Shofar, we don't know what's going on 100%. But Kesel Yom Chakenu, we don't know when Rosh Hashanah is 100%. I mean, we know eventually, but what is happening, you don't really know. It's Kesel. What's Kesel mean? Hidden. Why? Because that's what Rosh Hashanah is about. I don't know about you, but always I'm like, Rosh Hashanah is like really like happy, sad. How much should I eat? You know, fast, not fast. Rosh Hashanah is really, really confusing. So I feel that all of this is being alluded to in this pasuk. Rabbi Isai, I think I went overboard a little bit. I'm sorry about that, and I hope at least we know now what a Maisa mitzvah and a Kiyum mitzvah is, and we know that Shofar is pretty complicated. Okay, we'll stop here.